Good evening. We'll now call the special board meeting of December 18th, 2014 to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we get started, I did want to ask if we could just take a moment of silence in honor of the tragedy that happened in one of our neighboring districts. In particular, the teenage boy that was wounded in the rampage was a North Monco technical student, and I'd like to take a moment of silence for him and his family. Thank you. By way of announcements, the public is hereby advised of the audio and video recording of this meeting for the purposes of rebroadcasting. By way of executive session, there were several executive sessions since our last meeting. There was an executive session held on December 9th, 2014 for matters of personnel. There was an executive session held on December 17th, 2014 for legal matters regarding the petition for appeal before the PA Supreme Court by John Andrews on DCED approval of bond issue for the Methacton School District. No docket numbers available. There was an executive session held immediately prior to this meeting for matters of litigation regarding Methacton School District conditional use application before Worcester Township, the petition for appeal before the PA Supreme Court by John Andrews on DCED approval of bond issue for the Methacton School District, no docket number available, and also for one matter of personnel. By way of attendance, all board members are present except for Mrs. Barone, who had a family obligation. And we'll now move into public comment on board action items. Is there any public comment on board action items? Okay, seeing none, we'll dive into the agenda. I'm going to ask Dr. Zerbe to tick off the agenda items because I've asked him to go a little bit out of order from what was published. Same agenda, just in different order. So if you would take us through, please.
The first item for this evening is item number 9, policy. We have two policies for first reading, policy 005 and policy 006. If you want to refer to those policies, I'll just tell you exactly where those changes are at. On page 4 of 4, policy 005, the change reads in the first paragraph, it says, the president may appoint a vice chairperson for each committee, has been added. In addition, at the end of that section, it says the board president is an ex officio member of every committee. Those are the only two changes to policy 005. In policy 006, on page 2 of 9, in section 5 under regular meetings, it is now recommended to be read, regular board meetings shall be public and ordinarily scheduled in accordance with PA school code. Meetings shall be held at a location and times advertised. That there ends the recommended changes for both policies 005 and 006.
And so for clarification, the Pennsylvania school code is that school boards will meet at least once every 2 months.
That is correct.
Mrs. Woodring, anything to add?
Yeah, when we're talking about policy, let me get the number here, the 006, I guess my notes from our meeting on Wednesday suggested that here under section 5, regular meetings, that we were going to do a little more to explain what the PA school code indicated. We had a which requires one school board meeting every 2 months. So the reader would not necessarily have to refer to PA school code.
The only issue I would bring up on that is that if the school code changes, we'll have to go back and change policy. I don't know if that's an issue.
Well, we would have to do that in any case, in any policy, in any case. PSBA would tell us school code has changed, so you need to change your policy. Right?
Right, but we wouldn't have to if it just said in accordance with policy, with school code, right?
But as a discussion at the table, we said that it would save the reader having to refer to the PA school code. It would help understand that we are required by school code to have one meeting at least one meeting every 2 months.
Kim, that is correct. We had that discussion at the Public Policy Committee meeting, but we agreed at the end of the meeting that we would have the language as I'm presenting here this evening, and that's why it is represented that way.
Okay, well, that's not what my notes said, so,
Also being present, I don't have a note to say. We had a discussion on that topic. I have to say candidly, I thought in the end we decided that we would leave it out so that the code, or that the policy could be left this way, and that the code change would not require a change in policy. That was what, I mean, I can't say that with complete recollection, but that's what I would say, is I think we left it to just put it without that comment in it. And Mrs. Barone, unfortunately, was there, but is not here tonight.
I think, referring to it as the PA school code, it speaks for itself as what it actually means. So if the code does change, it allows us to not have to impact the policy, but just to follow the rule. So it is up for first reading. It is certainly, we would certainly have to go to a second reading, which would be at our next public meeting. Are there any other questions regarding the first reading of policy 005 or 006?
One, I'd like to ask Frank, hate to put you on the spot, but as far as that policy, would you weigh on the side that you'd rather see a policy that gives you the basic framework rather than specifics, where we'd have to go in and change the policy if we needed to? Would that be more cumbersome? Any suggestions?
Yeah, actually, it's just a matter of your preference. If you feel that the provision of the school code that says that you must have one meeting at least every 2 months is important to include in your policy, so be it. If you believe that the reference to the school code is sufficient, so be it. The comments that were made here are accurate. In the event that the school code was changed, one version of the policy would require amendment, the other version of the policy would not. But again, the likelihood of an amendment of that provision in the school code, I think, is highly unlikely in light of the fact it's been in there for a long, long time. But it's really up to you. It's your preference. Whatever the majority of the board thinks, that's the way it is.
Any other thoughts or comments? Okay.
Item number 2 on the agenda will actually be number 7, the personnel item. Mr. Harney, would you please provide the board the information related to number 7?
Sure. We just have one item for your approval this evening. It's the employment of one of our bus aides. It's a replacement position.
Is there a motion to approve the employment of Shania Rose, bus aide at an hourly rate as presented? Mrs. Hackett, is there a second? Mr. Pellicano, discussion? Questions for Mr. Harney? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? 8-0.
The next item on the agenda will be item number 6 under fiscal items. Mr. Whiteleather, would you please present to the board that item?
You have on for you this evening the request for approval of a RevTrak merchant service agreement pending the solicitor review. This is a system that would allow us to collect fees for use of facilities, any type of other donations that would require people to remit funds. This would be an opportunity to use this system via credit card, which would be an option for any individual to utilize for the school district. And there is no cost to the school district. The cost is borne by the user who chooses to use this system as one of the options available for payment of fees or donations, whatever those cases might be. It's a universal system that would allow us to have that open for basically any any option that would be would require somebody to be paying a fee, we could utilize this system for that. And as I said, the cost is borne by the user who chooses to use the system, not required. It's an option.
And just to follow up on that, as a result of our review of the current system, which is called BookKing, that we currently not only use to process credit cards, but use to process the use of facilities within the district. Between Mr. Harney, Mr. Whiteleather, Angela Lynch, several principals, and some of our other end users that are involved in the whole facilities usage process within the district, had reviewed this software against many other pieces of software. Ms. Lynch provided you here this evening a summary of what that evaluation process entailed. And essentially, when it was all boiled down, after talking with other districts that do similar types of community education programs and use of facility processes and do fundraising, a look at both Perkiomen Valley, North Penn, and Souderton, there are two software applications that were basically head-to-head. We chose, or the committee chose, to recommend for you here this evening the use of RevTrack. Are there any questions from the board at this moment?
I do. What was the, I noticed that the fee will be about 4% for the online transaction for the user. So in other words, if a parent wishes to pay for a pay-to-play fee, they will have to pay that 4%, correct? Okay. What was the fee for ASAP, which is what North Penn uses? Do you know offhand? Was it similar, more, less? No.
Angela, can I defer to you? Yes.
ASAP bills differently in that they bill per user, so you would have to add $4 to every transaction, a flat rate.
Okay, so they bill per transaction, right?
They bill per user, yes. You would have to increase the cost of anything you process through ASAP number 2, basically offset the fee of having the system.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions from board members?
What kind of efficiencies will be gained? I see that that it is referenced about Souderton gaining a 60% increase. Will this free up resources, or how will that work?
You were in the review process. Can you answer that, please?
Yeah, I think the benefit of this RevTrack system is it'll allow us to expand upon what we currently offer now. BookKing, which is what we currently use, is being used just for community ed programs. RevTrack will allow us to expand the offerings beyond that. Anything from the athletic participation fees, donations, things, basically anything that we could collect, that we do collect a fee for, RevTrack can be set up to accommodate us. BookKing does not provide that same flexibility within their system, and we're simply looking at this as an opportunity for us to really expand our offerings relative to allowing parents to use a credit card for payment of donation, a fee, community ed, whatever the case may be.
I mean, basically, this provides a convenience to our end users, as well as should free up some of our secretarial help to be able to reposition their skills to some other needs that we have within the district. Right now, most of our, if not all of our processing is done by hand, which at high volume times requires us to bring in some additional help. So our hope is that by bringing this system into the district, not only will we provide a convenience for our users that choose to use it, will reduce our ability, our reliance on a paper process that is cumbersome and cost ineffective.
So, I'm sorry, you have a question? Go ahead, now, please.
Just wanted to make a comment. On the agreement, I think it's 3.49% as opposed to 4% for this RevTrack. And I checked a couple of other sites that I'm familiar with, and that's a very competitive rate. One of the things that I think that this software also offers is the ability to issue tickets or something so that people can be admitted to classes, which is not a small item when you consider how that works.
Good point. I think, from the group that reviewed this, including folks from our athletic department as well, this is going to fit a multitude of needs. And that's why we're recommending it, and primarily bringing it to you this evening as a result of some recent conversation with our campaign fundraising committee. It was their wishes as we move into phase 2 of the fundraising effort to be able to provide an opportunity for alumni anywhere to be able to contribute to this most important effort. So with that said, it's before you this evening, otherwise it probably wouldn't have come to you later in January, possibly February. But because of their need, and we were already prepared with the information, we felt it appropriate to bring it to you this evening, and we ask for your approval.
So one last question. So RevTrak, it seems like they're focused on schools and governmental agencies, so they seem very specific to that market. Did you look at anything that was more general? Like I'm thinking like Square and folks like that.
Yes, we looked at other options for collecting fees through the system, just through numerous little things. Either they had certain things that seemed positive, but on the other side, there were challenges to us, mainly in the fee structures. The fees for a lot of these systems are set up in a way that they might have had a lower transaction fee, but there were other fees involved that pushed that charge well above what would be comparison with the RevTrak. As well as RevTrak, for all intents and purposes, they basically are saying at any time you can cancel the agreement. So, you know, whereas other ones tied you into a longer term, you know, they, based upon the strength of the system and the references and everything else, you know, we really felt, you know, evaluating a multitude of different software applications for this, that this seemed to fit what we needed best.
Okay. Any further questions or comments?
Just to make sure I've got clear on this. So I'm reading the online transaction at 3.99. Is that's what the merchant agreement says?
I had a copy that it was crossed off 3.99 and written in 3.49 in initial.
Do you have that information, Angela?
It's 3.49.
Okay, so this is inaccurate.
That is correct.
So then the end user using this system with a transaction school cost of $100 would actually face a transaction cost of $103.49. Is that how that would work? Is that how that would be presented? Rather than any fees associated with the 100 as is more normal with credit cards.
Right. There's basically two different ways you can apply this. You can either, one, the person donates X number of dollars, the transaction fee comes off of that, the net amount would be the one remitted for whatever the purpose would be. Other application would be where you would add that charge onto the fee itself. So you would adjust it, instead of $100 as your example, you would adjust it to $103.50. So your net effect would be the $100 in that example.
And one of the selling points of this particular software allows us to, on the fly, make that determination, where many of them just said this, it's one way or another, and you're stuck with that process. So in the donation sequence, we might set up a silo differently than we would, say, if you were buying a ticket to an event.
Does the software allow the change to allow the school district to bore that cost for certain specific situations? So, for example, you know, you have a donor who's willing to give $5,000, whatever it may be, rather than he or she, they put it on their credit card, getting hit with that amount. You know, would we be willing to, you know, whatever, take that charge? And I'm saying we should, but is that a possibility if we ever need to do that in that way?
I would assume that basically we could look at an application such as that. We didn't necessarily do that, but just, I guess, for sake of looking at it as an option, it certainly could be an option for us to look at. It would just be the matter of the fee. If we would agree to doing something like that, we would just have to work under the understanding that that fee would be borne by the district, and then we would have to come to some type of agreement relative to, based on donations or whatever the case may be, what type of charges we would anticipate incurring based upon that. So not to say we can't do it, it's just a matter of us evaluating circumstances surrounding that particular.
Is the, so the card reader, do we get a reduced rate if we use the card reader? Or is it the same rate as the online transaction?
It's the same rate, and there was two ways you could do the card reader. You could rent it or purchase it. Renting it for a short period of time, you could basically purchase the thing and have it for as long as you need it. So it was more advantageous for us to look at it from a purchasing standpoint because the cost of it is minimal.
Right, but there's no difference in rate.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the RevTrak Merchant Services Agreement pending solicitor review at no cost to the district, no upfront cost to the district. Mr. McFarland, is there a second? Mrs. Shackelford? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Passes 7-1.
The next item on the agenda,
You guys didn't allow questions from the floor, did you, before you voted?
Yeah, there was time at the beginning for public comment on board action items.
Okay.
item number 4 for this evening. Item number 4, I'm asking the board to approve the following motion. The motion is to retroactively approve, as of December 16, 2014, Lamb and McElwain, attorneys at law, as special counsel at an hourly rate of $350 to represent Methacton School District in the matter of John Andrews' petition for allowance of appeal to the PA Supreme Court.
Okay, now, so that was not on the agenda, so if there is any public comment on this item and this item alone, I'll take that now.
You need the motion and the second.
I don't need the motion first before I take public comment on this.
You can do it either way. You've announced your intention of it, so you can either
Take it
take
now.
public comment ahead of time
Yeah.
or after it's
Yeah, sir.
You hear me, Barry, or you want me to stand up?
Come down to the microphone and please state your name and where you live for the record.
Is it on? My name is Steve Rock. I live in Worcester. You want my specific address?
Nope, that's
All
fine.
right.
Thank you.
Governing the appeal process, I just would like to hear a little bit more about it. One question I have is, is this about the field? And as our cost to the taxpayer are starting to rise on this thing, do we see any way that maybe we could start to go back and maybe work on getting some of our costs back? I mean, we ever thought about maybe filing suit against these people that just keep saying, I tell you what, I want to write another appeal. Next year, I want to write another appeal. 6 months, it's my turn. I mean, when can we get this? There's got to be a path to stop this. There's got to be a path. And 20,000 turns into 50,000, turns into 100,000. I mean, I go to every single solitary township meeting, and it doesn't take long to count millions.
Well, let me stop you for a second, sir. When you say, no, you don't have to go. When you say appeal, so we're talking about a specific matter around the lawsuit.
John Andrews.
Yeah, okay, we're not talking about the Worcester Township Supervisor.
That is correct.
Okay, just make sure we're clear. Okay, go ahead.
So my question was, could I understand or could I hear a little bit more about that? Appeal, is that something that's going to take how much time? Could it take 30 days? Could it take 5 months? I mean, how's that going to affect our plans? And does our board here have any plans on maybe starting to work on getting back some of our costs in this process?
Solicitor?
Yeah, if I may, sir. This is a matter that's in litigation right now, so we're reluctant to say too much about exactly what it is that the board will or won't be doing. And actually, I'm not the legal counsel who's handling it. There's another firm that will be handling that. So I'll defer answering your questions at this point in time. I would just suggest that you stay tuned. Okay?
Thank you. Any other comments on this action item? Candy?
Candy Agaville. Can I ask a simple question? Why are we hiring another law firm? I mean, I don't know, is this Mr. Bartle's firm? Is this not your area of expertise? Or, I mean, because over the years, we've had a lot of law firms in this school district.
I think that the easy answer is that this appeals before the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which is a very specific practice, and so we're hiring a firm that deals with the Pennsylvania Supreme Court.
Okay. Don't you think maybe the people that are watching this tape need to know exactly what entails in this lawsuit? A lot of people may not be aware of this from the very beginning, and maybe not give in detail, but cliff notes of why the taxpayers are now paying for another law firm. And we paid for a lot of law firms during the school district Malik lawsuit. Now we're getting more lawyers. It seems the only one making money in this school district is the attorneys. So I think you ought to give a brief overview to the public exactly why you're in the process of hiring another law firm that we're going to have to pay for.
Well, I certainly agree that we're hiring too many lawyers. It's unfortunate we have to. I don't know if the solicitor wants to address this or what I can and can't say. Okay. I did have a statement, actually, so Candy, I had a statement I was going to read later, but since you brought it up, I will read it now. And this addresses the Fields project, and will also shed some light on what's going on with this piece of action. So this is a statement from the board on the Fields project bid status. As everyone is aware, this board and the school district staff have been working diligently to continue progress in the Fields project. We are excited and hopeful that Methacton athletes will be able to use these new facilities as soon as possible. Bids from interested contractors were due on December 3rd, 2014. All bids received were opened at a public meeting on that date. In summary, we received 5 general contractor bids, 4 bids from electrical contractors, and 3 bids for plumbing contractors. Additionally, we received several other bids for the turf, fencing, and other work. We held meetings with the low bidders on Monday to confirm that they fully understood the requirements of this project and to be sure that their proposals will accurately reflect the cost of doing the work required. Our property committee then reviewed the low bids and has prepared a presentation and recommendation to the full board to vote formally to accept the bids tonight. Unfortunately, we have been forced to postpone this vote. In the last week, an individual who is not involved with the project in any way filed a petition for allowance of appeal to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania to challenge our financing of the project. This legal challenge is not new. The appeal is baseless and can only serve to delay the project and cost the district precious tax dollars. This individual had previously challenged our bond before a state agency and had appealed to the Commonwealth Court, the second highest court in Pennsylvania. Both the agency and the Commonwealth Court reviewed his allegations and summarily dismissed them as meritless. Because the petition has no merit and is costing the district time and money, this board has instructed legal counsel to seek any recourse available under the law to recover the district's costs. For this reason, our attorneys have sent a letter demanding a withdrawal of the frivolous appeal. They have informed this individual that we will be requesting the court to require payment of the district's attorney fees and costs if he does not. Regardless, the district continues to take all action it can to resolve this appeal as quickly as possible. It is very likely that the Supreme Court will decide not to allow this appeal. We will keep the students, parents, and residents of the school district up to date with this case at each public meeting. Make no mistake, the board and the district are committed to this project. We still expect to complete this project on time and will take every step necessary to make sure that this happens. And we thank you for your patience and understanding. So I hope that sheds some light on where we're at. Additional public comment on this action item?
Thanks for clearing up my question.
You're welcome. Okay, hearing no other item, I will I will ask for a motion to retroactively approve, as of December 16, 2014, Lamb McErleen attorneys at law as special counsel at an hourly rate of $350 to represent the Thackton School District in the matter of John Andrews' petition for allowance of appeal to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Is there a motion? Sure. Mr. Shackelford, is there a second? Mr. Phillips, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? 8-0 passes. Thank you. Dr. Zerbe, next on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next item on the agenda will be number 8.2, athletic tournament, and I will read that. We're asking the board to approve a trip for the Methacton High School Wrestling to Manheim, Pennsylvania on December 28th through the 30th for the Manheim Holiday Wrestling Tournament. No cost to the district.
Can I have a motion to approve that trip as presented? Mrs. Woodring, is there a second? Mr. McFarland, any discussion? Okay. Mrs. Hackett?
I would just like to comment that it was December, that this is for December, and we are now just a couple of days before that at a special meeting. I think it would be helpful if we could plan a little bit more in advance for items of this sort, since it's important that we approve trips of this sort.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? 8-0. Moving on, Dr. Zerbe.
The next item on the agenda will be number 8.3, 2014-2015 Superintendent Goals. I have placed a document before each of you, and it reads this. It reads Superintendent Goals for 2014-15. There are a total of 10 goals that range in support of the board goals as you adopted in September of 2014. And they also include items particular to the establishment of a culture of data-driven decision-making with activities and timelines defined. And they also include the implementation of a meaningful, comprehensive plan that considers all existing plans, goals, objectives, and policies, and provides a clear direction for the future of district programs and operations. These goals will be, with your approval this evening, will be posted to the district website under the superintendent area of the district website. Are there any questions relative to the goals before you this evening?
Just a brief comment. These goals, as we understand them, just for the public's benefit, are in collaboration with previously established board goals, so that they are complementary to that set of goals as well, rather than being independent. I just wanted to point that out.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, then I will ask for a motion to approve the goals of the superintendent for the 2014-2015 school year as presented. Mr. McFarland, is there a second? Mrs. Woodring, any discussion? Ms. Woodring?
I just wanted to ask, are these then, after approval, posted online?
These will be posted online under the superintendent section of the district website.
Thank you.
I think that'll be good. Folks can go back and tie back the board goals to the superintendent goals and see what we're working on. Any further questions or discussion? Mr. Phillips?
Just the only thing I see that I've always talked about is the zero increase in taxes. Define that as a goal for us, define that as a goal for a superintendent. This is something that if nobody has that goal somewhere in writing or it's on paper, publicly displayed, they don't work towards that. And that was the only one thing that I felt that, as far as our superintendent and the staff and even us, is to have some type of a fiscal goal that is defined by a number. And that's the only thing that I'd see that would need addressed.
So what do you want to do? Do you want to propose an amendment to add that, or are you just making a comment?
Yeah, I would like an amendment where the superintendent will propose a budget that is a zero increase budget, and that he presents it to us on where he feels that the school district needs to go to obtain that, and then decide whether we want to attempt to do that, or do we have an increase so we don't have to make certain decisions. But I think if we're never facing the music with trying to balance our budget on a yearly basis, it's always going to ladder up. I mean, 35 years, increase after increase every year, but the board's never had a goal to have a balanced budget. I mean, at what point do we start looking at, well, you know what, our revenues are this, our increases are happening. What time do we start figuring out we're going to stop the train? And I just would like something in there that he would propose a balanced budget by end of the year.
So, Mr. Barlow, got to help me out here for a second. So, if he wants to make an amendment to this, you recommend we approve this first and then come back, or can he make a motion for an amendment, and how does that work? Is there a second needed?
He can make it go ahead.
Yeah, he certainly can make any motion, and you can make any recommendation to what these goals are, but these goals need to be agreed upon between the board and the superintendent. This evening, I'm certainly not prepared to address that particular goal, even though I hope that this board recognizes that we certainly need to work together to provide the most efficient and effective organization that we need. So I'm not opposed to the ideology of a 0% tax increase. I just want you to know that I'm not prepared this evening to negotiate that as one of my goals for the 2014-15 school year.
I'd just like to say, I think in the past we've discussed this, and I think it was Mr. McFarland who said, and I think most of us agreed with him, that we didn't think it was prudent to box ourselves into that sort of goal. While, I mean, we're all fully committed to be as prudent as possible with respect to the budget, and I can assure you that the Finance Committee is, and we'll be looking at everything that is spent and how it's spent, that we just didn't think that was prudent, given a lot of unknowns at this particular point in time.
The thing about a goal, it's something that you try to obtain. If you believe that you would like to obtain a zero tax increase, that's what you work towards. If you don't want to obtain a zero tax increase, you don't have a goal of a zero tax increase. You can change things based on the climate, the economics. I mean, that's why when it comes to development in our townships in our school district, where it's going to affect our revenue, that's why I feel we should start stepping out, looking at our revenues that come in, what we could do to increase that, and then maybe we can have another part of the puzzle that balances our budget without cutting things, whether it's personnel for busing, food service, teachers, support staff, etc. So what's the harm in having a goal that we balance our budget every year? And what's wrong with having a goal that we figure out how to bring more revenues in so we don't have to cut things? I don't understand the concept of not having a goal for something like that when we're running a district that deals with revenues in and expenses out. It's very simple.
Okay, so let's do this. So in light of the fact that per the superintendent contract, we have to jointly, board and superintendent, agree on the goals. Let's take the motion up, unless there's other comments, on the goals as is, and then we can certainly figure out a way to have a discussion about further goals or further direction around an increase or a lack of increase for this budget. Any other comments?
Just one in that direction. If we look at goal number 3, which discusses contingency plans with regard to expenditures, it does not state there any reference to zero tax, but the implication of contingency is identify areas where costs can be taken out so that the budget does not have to increase. So by implication, goal 3 is in the direction of what Mr. Phillips is requesting. So is it possible that we could approve all the goals, perhaps except for 3, to isolate that conversation to that goal, and then have the discussion with Dr. Zerbe about the language of that? Would that be a benefit, or should we just, pass the whole thing and come back?
I would say we can pass it and come back. We can always come back and adjust it, but that way we get some time to think through how we might structure a goal like that, or whether it needs to be a goal or it's just a direction to the superintendent to have a 0% increase or whatever that direction is at the time.
Yeah, we'll just kick it down the road a little further to can. That's all.
Any other comments? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second to approve the goals of the superintendent for the 14-15 school year as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? 7-1. Thank you, Dr. Zerbe.
The next item on the agenda will be number 11. It's listed as old business under communications and community relations. I'll defer this matter to Mr. McFarland.
Thank you. I'm going to distribute to the board hard copy of the first communication, which will be sent out. And it is hard copy only because it is not possible at this, or at least not practical at this meeting, to present this in the electronic format. So as you look at it, the committee, and I should say, with the tremendous assistance of Mrs. Lynch, has put together this first communication, which will be presented to the public in electronic format. There will be no printed copies, or at least none of any significance, and so therefore no identifiable costs associated with this release. Again, with the assistance and aid of Mrs. Lynch, this will be, with the board's approval, emailed to 7,400 users via e-alert to the district's website and district families, tweeted to 1,000 Twitter followers on the district's Facebook page, placed on the district's homepage, which received more than 60,000 direct visits last month, and also archived in the school board section of the website. So this will be our first distribution of the item. With regard to the constituents with whom we hope to communicate, we are reaching the parents of the students, the staff, and the teachers. What I'm not completely comfortable with yet, which we need to continue to work on, is the non-involved taxpayers who have no children in the school, who may not be getting as much of saturation with regard to this message as we might like. We will continue to talk with perhaps the township and others to try to utilize their distribution in order to get this further out. But in this first one, we recognize there may not be as much distribution to that section of the constituency as we might like. We will continue to work on that. So I present this to you for your review. I don't know if we need a motion, but I just would like to advise you, subject to questions or concerns, that early next week we would intend to publish this document.
First, I think it's terrific work. So appreciate you and Ms. Lynch and the committee working on this. I don't think we need a motion because we've already kind of established the committee and established that we were going to go and do things like this. But I think this is a great start, and I'm excited to see where we can take this. So it looks good on my end.
Well, thank you. Just very briefly for the benefit of the public, there is a brief letter of introduction. There is a section which gives a brief biography of the members of the board, again, reaching out to what may be a new audience. We wanted to make sure that they had some detail on that. And then also the previously established board goals will be listed for the public to review in this issue. In addition to that, there will be a link to the most recent school board meeting so that people reading this would have the opportunity to go and look at that as well. So those are just the main components of the communication, which, as I said again, will be electronic. We may print a few copies just for people to be able to see it, but our intent is not to spend money in hard copy.
I mean, I think it looks great. Just one thing it's kind of thinking about for consideration, and maybe it's on here when you click the hyperlinks, but should we add anything about the committees and the structure, given that we have some new committees now?
And I was thinking that maybe that would be a good next issue, right? Kind of first issue focused on the board, next is the committee structure, and kind of, but, Mr. McFarland and the committee may have, thoughts on that.
I agree that would be useful information. I'd like to just step into this and then move forward once people recognize the base board. We can then begin to carve into that some of the more
Yeah, maybe we
specific
can
topics.
do a focus on specific committees and what they're working on, that type of
Precisely.
thing.
Yeah, so that would be a very good suggestion, but I'd like to carry it forward. I mean, we're going to issue this every month. I need content, so I'm not going to crowd it all into the first issue. But thank you for the suggestion. We'll follow up on it.
Terrific. Anything else? Okay, great. Well, we thank you and Ms. Lynch and the committee. Dr. Zerbe?
I just want to make sure that the board is aware that item 8.1, Methacton High School Fields Renovation Project Update, it was to allow President Nascimento to read his statement. So I just wanted you to know that we can mark that one off as an item that was covered under the previous request under public comments for the motion for special counsel. The last item of business that I have before the board this evening is a motion that is, again, not on the agenda, but is for your consideration. The motion reads this way. I'm asking for the district to approve, or the board to approve the district solicitor to file an appeal with the Court of Common Pleas regarding the December 17th, 2014 decision by the supervisors of Worcester Township on the Methacton School District conditional use application. And I will now ask our solicitor to provide some detail around that motion. Mr. Barrow?
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. Last evening, many of us went to the... I'm sorry. Last evening, many of us attended the meeting of the Worcester Township Board of Supervisors and heard the decision that was made by them with respect to our conditional use application. As you know, the conditional use application has been going on had been going on for some time. I think there were more than 12 or 14 hearings that were held altogether with respect to that. The good news with respect to the decision is that the decision was in our favor with respect to the approval of the lighting project. The difficult part of the decision is that we have said from the beginning in our matter before them that we were greatly concerned with the illumination levels, that we needed the illumination levels that we had asked for because our experts had all indicated that they were the safe levels of illumination for the children to be able to play sports appropriately and safely. Unfortunately, last evening, the Board of Supervisors, by a 2-to-1 vote, decided to set illumination levels at levels that were not in conformance with the levels that we had suggested under the ordinance and that were supported by the testimony of the experts. That was the first issue. The second issue had to do with the number of nights per week. The ordinance itself indicates that the School district will be able to play up to a maximum of 6 nights per week. With respect to the use of the lights, Worcester, for some reason in its conditions, last evening limited that to 4. Obviously, that's a problem from the standpoint of the usability of the field. All of you remember the testimony with respect to if you have a field that's a grass field, it counts as 1 field. If you have a field and it's a turf field, it counts as 2 because you can use it at different times, and there's no downtime with respect to allowing for the grass to grow and regenerate. If you have a field that has a turf and at the same time is a lighted field, it counts as 3 fields because then you can use it for additional time during the day as well. We put all of that testimony in the record. Notwithstanding that, the Board of Supervisors decided by that 2-to-1 vote that we could only use our fields 4 nights a week during the time periods. Of course, remember that the fields are not used 12 months of the year. They're not used for a couple of months during the summer, and they're not used for a couple of months during the winter, as that doesn't comply with our sports schedules. So for those reasons primarily, and for other reasons that exist throughout 16 conditions that were attached to the decision, I have asked the board if we want to proceed with this and use it for the number of nights that we had indicated, and also use it at the illumination levels that were deemed safe by our experts. We should file the appeal, and that's why I've recommended as I have.
Thank you. So, again, this isn't on the agenda, so I'll ask if there's any public comment on this particular action item. Candy, go ahead.
Candy Alaba, I only have one question. Was anybody really surprised by this decision? I mean, when they first said they approved the continuous use, I thought, oh, okay. And then when they started reading this 16 conditions, it was like it was deteriorating as they went down the list. So, I mean, I'm not surprised that you're appealing it, but I don't know if anybody was really surprised by their decision last night. I was a little more than I expected. I thought maybe after all the hearings and all the time and effort and money that was spent, when they said they approved it, I thought maybe they came to the school district and Worcester came to some kind of compromise. Is compromise off the table at this point, since we've gone this far into this? I mean, is there still any wiggle room for a compromise? I mean, a meeting of the minds and...
Well, I can only say this. I mean, we had the opportunity of presenting our case, and let me just tell you the way that I look at this thing. One of the supervisors last night went on at some length over the issue of whether there was a compromise possible between the neighbors and the school district with respect to the application. In my view, that compromise took place fairly on when the ordinance was passed. A conditional use is a use that is permitted as of right so long as you meet the conditions that are in the ordinance. My reading of their decision is that they essentially have found, as a matter of fact, and you're welcome to read the decision, there's copies available, they found, as a matter of fact, that we met the conditions in the ordinance. So in my view, that was what should have been the end of the discussion with respect to illumination levels and nights of play. You can't do any more than look at their ordinance that says that you can play 6 nights a week. You cannot play on Sunday. You cannot play during daylight, or I should say not play, but you cannot use the lights during daylight. You cannot use the lights on Sunday. And say, okay, we've read your ordinance and we agree. And that wasn't good enough. So it makes it difficult from that perspective when Dr. Zerbe and the board members here have to determine classes and sporting events and the like, and be able to use the fields in sufficient amounts of time or blocks of time to satisfy their whole program. And we were very upfront with everybody involved from the beginning with respect to that. So too with respect to the illumination levels. You know, if you have an expert, and we brought an expert down from Penn State, totally disinterested expert. You were there the night that he made his presentation, and his testimony was you need a minimum of 50-foot candles of light to play football or lacrosse. You need a minimum of 50-foot candles to practice lacrosse. And a minimum of 30-foot candles with respect to all of the other games and practices. We got less than that. His testimony was that those minimums were based on what was necessary for safe play. This is a school board. It's not possible to ask a school board to put students on a field and have them play at lighting levels that are less than the expert says are safe to play on, especially when you bring somebody down who's on the Penn State staff as a teacher and comes down and testifies, and that's was testified to be the number 2 lighting department in the world. We brought people with tremendous credentials to testify to the right things, and that was rejected by the 2-to-1 vote. So anything can be compromised. I've had many cases that didn't think we'd compromise eventually, and they did, but they can't be compromised on those bases.
Well, I didn't know if it was like past that point. I mean, I know at some point you have to reach that point where you just can't compromise anymore. But I wasn't sure because sometimes it got a little, you know, and then when I heard the decision last night, it seemed like they were past the point of compromise. So I just thank you for clearing that up.
You're welcome. Sir?
Steve Rock, I'll make it quick. Thank you very much for your efforts. I believe you should appeal it. I want you to know in the community you guys have a tremendous amount of support to make for sure that you get the right lighting, you get a new field, and it gets put in play exactly how you need it done. So just please keep going with your efforts, and when you need some help, reach out. We're going to be out there to help you. All right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Any additional public comment on this action item? Okay, seeing none, I will ask for a motion to approve the district solicitor to file an appeal with the Court of Common Pleas, regarding the December 17, 2014 decision by the supervisors of Worcester Township on the Methacton School District conditional use application. Mr. Pelicano, is there a second? Mr. Phillips, any discussion? Any comments? I'd just like to reiterate what I said before. The board and the district remains committed to this project. At the end of the day, we have the go-ahead to move forward. We don't agree with everything. That's why we're going to appeal. That's why we're voting on appealing. And we're going to appeal because it's the right thing to do, because the safety of our kids is what is at stake here. So we're going to move forward with the appeal, but this does not stop us from moving forward with the efforts to put this field in. And in fact, it just spurs it on. So just ask everyone for their patience and their understanding. If there's no other comments, all those in favor? Opposed? 8-0. Thank you. Dr. Zerbe, anything else?
I have no other items for this evening.
Dates for board member calendars. Dr. Zerbe and I will finalize the schedule for 2015 and get that out to everybody, so we don't have anything there at this point. Anything under new business? Anything additional under old business? Okay. Courtesy of the floor. Sir? And in accordance with board policy, I'm going to ask everyone to keep their comments to 3 minutes during courtesy of the floor.
Township gives us 5. Steve Rock, I just had a quick comment. I realize you may want to answer this in an email form or so, but just some quick questions about the new RevTrack that you guys have elected to use. Is the application for that to be used through the office, through your web page? Nobody really provided information on, hey, can I go to your webpage and say, oh, I'd like to be able to donate $25 to the swim team or the football team or something, and I go to a specific column on there or something? I mean, how is that used? Are you willing to answer that tonight, or? That's the only comment I have.
We'll get you, per the policy, we'll get you an email from Ms. Lynch, but I think there's a variety of different ways it's going to be used.
Yeah, because there's, technology out there today is huge. And don't take this wrong, but I realize that there's a lot of our community processes are a little bit behind in technology versus the way that we do things in business today. And so RevTrack is something I've never heard of before, but I know there's a lot of other ways to get there, you guys, with zero charges for being used. So.
If you get Ms. Lynch your email, we'll get an email answer to you. Thank you. Courtesy of the floor, Candy?
I have two quick comments. I understand Mr. Phillips' desire to have a 0% tax increase, but I have yet to hear I don't know if anybody on the board is aware of what the increase was we got from the state of Pennsylvania this year, according to the PA budget. In fact, the school district got a 6.8% increase, which was a little over $1 million. That should be, and that information I received from my state representative, who listed the school districts and what their increases are. I know right now the school districts are worried about these education commission and this hold harmless and their funding, but the public really is not made aware of what money is handed over to the school districts and how it's used. But, I mean, I've always agreed with a 0% tax increase. Just unfortunately, we've never seen it here. And also, when you mentioned the lawsuit or hiring the attorneys to fight Mr. Andrews, as someone who's come to this school board meetings and been involved in 2 lawsuits involving the school district, one of them was the Sunshine lawsuit, and I sat here for 4 years and heard a member of the public belittle us for bringing the lawsuit against the school district, and was told on more than one occasion it was a frivolous lawsuit and that we should be forced to pay lawyer fees. But the judges in Montgomery County didn't seem to agree with it, which they kept the lawsuit alive. And the school board compromised in the very end. Unfortunately, it took 4 years and like $80,000. So I personally, when you say it's a frivolous lawsuit, I think it would be better represented if you said you don't agree with it, you don't agree with the appeal, and you will fight it, because being told and being verbally abused by a louder member of the public against the Sunshine lawsuit, I just, as a member of the public, that's, I think, demeaning to say that. But I mean, you're taking the course of action that you have to or that you can. But I don't think any lawsuit is frivolous until a judge says it is. And we won't know what the judges say until you get in, is it Superior Court? Or
Pennsylvania Supreme Court.
Supreme Court. I know there's a lot of courts when you get to Harrisburg. So it'll be curious how it turns out, but that was just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for courtesy of the floor? Okay, seeing none, I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Ms. Woodring, second. Mr. Phillips, all those in favor? Opposed? 8-0. We stand adjourned. Thank you. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we will see you in 2015.